So, hi, Lyndell. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to chat about your experiences as a technical official.
Oh, you're welcome, Michael. Thanks for including me.
Now, I know you haven't always been a technical official. You did start off as an athlete, is that correct? Or how did you get into the sport?
Yeah. Well, I set a goal for myself to do a triathlon before I turn 30, and people will be doing the maths now and realizing how old I am, but that's okay. So I decided many years ago that I wanted to do a triathlon before I turned 30, and when I was about 29, I joined a triathlon club and trained up and did my first triathlon.
Okay. And you obviously got a little bit bitten by the bug because you continued on, obviously, competing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was one of those things where it was something that I never imagined I'd even be able to do a triathlon, really.
Hmm.
I'd never been a really sporty kid. When I told my dad I was joining a triathlon club, he told me, he started to get a bit worried about me and said, "But Lyndall, you don't have an athletic bone in your body." I said to him, "I must have one, Dad. I'm going to find it." So,
Yeah.
so off I went, and yeah, I did it.
Yeah. And how did you then become an official? I mean, people come in different ways. What was your sort of journey into the world of officiating?
Yeah, probably a pretty common story. I was got injured a couple of years into my life as a triathlete, and decided that instead of just standing around at races doing not much very useful, that there might be something more useful that I could do. And
Hmm.
I knew that there was a pathway or an option to become a technical official, and I could go along and do a course and learn little bit more about the sport. So off I went, and thought I would volunteer for a year to just be a bit more useful on the field of play.
Okay. And what was your early experience of being an official, that sort of first course? Can you remember the first course and how that went?
I do remember the course. I found it really interesting, actually.
Hmm.
And look, probably it was probably luck of the draw, really. The first course that I did to become a LTO here in Queensland was taught by Jackie Kenny, who sort of took me under a wing and really helped to motivate me and inspire me to, keep going as an official and get better. And she put me out of my comfort zone a number of times throughout my technical official career, and
Yep.
usually it
Sure.
worked out okay. So,
Oh, we might get to a little bit of
um,
that. Uh,
yeah,
I
but
mean,
I guess. Oh, anyway, I guess it wasn't all plain sailing. I did have a few early experiences that weren't particularly positive.
mhm.
It was a long time ago in the program, and not all of the officials that I encountered early on had that same positivity as some of the others. And that old, I guess lots of athletes would say that technical officials become technical officials so that they can yell at people, and I encountered a
Uh,
few people like that.
oh, okay. That was quite early on.
Yeah, pretty early on, and yeah, so I really had me scratching my head because that's not who I am, and it's not how I wanted to spend my time on a Sunday morning. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really wondered whether that's what I needed to do. And it was good that I had some other influences and some other role models to model myself off, to see that um, the best way forward really was for me to find out what I could offer
Okay.
as Lyndall,
Yeah.
instead of trying to be like somebody else or trying to be like another person, figure out what I could bring, yeah,
So
out
a
of
lot
my
of
skill
people,
set.
yeah, certainly a lot of people sometimes go through that and they have a bad experience as an
Mm,
official early on and go, not for me, leave. Whereas
yeah,
you took a different approach of sort of looking at, okay, well, not for me, maybe, but hang on, can I approach this differently? And sort of flipped it around on itself.
yeah. Look, I had some bad experiences, but I also had some good experiences. So,
Mm.
it wasn't all bad. So,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, that was the attitude I took. I just thought, well, what can I bring? And maybe I can change some of those people that are grumpy all the time. Maybe I can show them that there's a different way to approach the sport, and,
Yeah.
Sunday mornings on the field of play, and try and spread some,
Yeah.
joy and happiness.
Yes. Well, you do spend a lot of joy at events. I suppose those, yeah, going in looking into those early days there, some of the people that helped influence you, how did they sort
Mm.
of guide and influence you to believe?
Um, good question. So I think what I Well, I guess what I noticed was that there were lots of different personalities, and I realised that there was more than one way to be a technical official, and that was really valuable to me. So I think people just being good at what they did in the way that they did it was a good influence. You
Yeah.
know, to just to know that there wasn't just one way to be a technical official, and being able to see different experiences and different options. And I guess the way my early mentors did that was, just push me to do different things.
Can you
I'd
recall when
been,
they've put you in some challenging positions, like it might
yeah,
have been your
yeah,
first race referee role, or
yeah. Um, so my first race referee role was going to be a lovely mentored experience with Sarah Sarah Reed, who was
Mhm.
the other person who taught the course with Jackie Kenny. And so they teamed me up with her to be my mentor, to be my first race referee role at the QTS Raby Bay event. And I felt really comfortable about that. I knew Sarah, and there's a couple of other people I'd worked with a bit on the team, so that was good. But on race day, two or three people dropped out.
Oh,
There, we had less people on the team than expected. So Sarah just sort of said, "Well, what do you want to do? Are you okay to just go and do your thing?"
yep.
Because we just didn't have enough people
Yep.
for someone to be, you know, taking me around and showing me the ropes and making
Yeah.
sure I was okay the whole time. So,
For those that don't know, Raby Bay, so how many people are we talking in terms of the size of an event?
yeah, so that's one of our what we call the Queensland Triathlon Series events. It's always been a pretty big one, always hundreds to even up to 1,200 competitors there,
Okay.
I
Yep.
guess.
Hmm.
It's and all there is a series race where some of the open competitors race for money, so there's serious people there, but there's also lots of people who do their first triathlon there. That's where I did my first triathlon as well. So
Oh,
yeah, so I guess that's the advantage that I did have, is that I knew the race well. I'd officiated there before. I'd also raced there. I'd kind of done a bit of a plan. So because it was my first time as a race
hmm.
referee, I had done that preparation, and I wasn't expecting to be told what to do all day. I'd sort of
Sure.
prepared myself and knew what my plan was. So when everything changed and it became a very different scenario, you know, again, Sarah said, "Are you okay if we go to plan B and you go and do this by yourself, and I'll just stay here and support the team?" And because we just didn't have enough people to do all of the stuff we needed to do. I felt
Sure.
supported, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I felt prepared. I felt supported, and yeah,
Yeah. No, that's important. I mean, as you say, you prepared, and that's a really good sort of tip for anyone sort of first getting their first role in any sort of sense, is to be sort of prepared in terms of that.
yeah, definitely.
A lot of people obviously know you from the ITU world. Now, when did you sort of first touch the ITU world as an official?
Oh gosh, there's an experience as well. One of the earliest experiences that I remember. So Mooloolaba World Cup is obviously our local race here in Queensland.
Hmm.
So I've been going to Mooloolaba for many, many years. Um, I've been going to Mooloolaba for many years now, both as to work with the age group race as well as the ITU race. I guess one of the earliest times, again, this was a time where one of my mentors pushed me a little bit.
Okay.
There was a scenario where the person who was meant to be chief registration wasn't able to fulfil her duties because she was racing in the age group race. And back in those days, the age group race happened first, and then the elite races happened
Okay.
after that on the Sunday. So it was a very big, packed day on the Sunday. So I was given the job of being the chief registration, and I don't even remember being at an ITU race before that. So,
Oh boy.
so we'd had our TO briefing on the Saturday morning, and this transpired that this was going to be my job. So I just, again, I did the preparation, did as much preparation as I could. Again, I think they were short on technical officials as well, so there weren't a lot of people to,
help you
step
out.
up and check that. I didn't have much. I don't think I even had any help in the registration. Yeah. So yeah, I got all my paperwork, got the uniform templates, asked lots of questions, got a pretty thorough briefing about what was required and what I'd be doing. And I went home that night. I was staying with some friends, and there was a gang of us there from the Tri Club that I was with. Most people were, racing the next day. And so I'm sitting there in my pajamas on Saturday night with uniform templates and checklists and just freaking out, really. But I just wanted to spend that time again to go over what I'd been told that day and what was going to happen. And again, just try and be as prepared as I could for the next day when I showed up to do something I'd never done before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the start. I mean, and that's not an uncommon start sometimes when we first have those. But it's also you took on the opportunity. You obviously did a great job because you went back to an ITU event after that. So that's always good.
Yeah.
You're asked back.
Yeah, look, I think that's the thing. And this is advice that I give to other officials as they're coming up through getting new experiences as well. If somebody gives you an opportunity, it's because they believe you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're not sure what you're doing and you're not sure whether you can pull it off, you probably can, because whoever's given you that responsibility trusts you to be able to do that. So, yes, we all have our, frailties and fears, and we question our abilities from time to time, regardless of how long we've been doing this. But just remember that the people who believe in you have that faith for a reason.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned from that experience. Again, the people who asked me to do that, Jackie, Kenny, she's probably going to get a lot of call outs in this interview. Yeah. But Jackie believed I could do it, and she believed that I was her best option to be able to fulfill that role and just step up and do it. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Then obviously you moved on from there. You're now a level 2 ITU official, and you had your first major sort of TD role at New Plymouth.
First TD at a World Cup at New Plymouth. Yeah.
How was that sort of stepping up to that World Cup level in terms of being a TD that first time?
Yeah, really interesting. I'd been a TD at 2 ITU events, I think, before then at Takapuna in New Zealand. So again, I was probably more fearful the first time I was a TD in general at that Continental Cup in Takapuna, because that was a very new experience. By the time I got to the World Cup level, I'd been to New Zealand. I was familiar with how the races ran over there, because yes, it's a triathlon, and yes, it's run under ITU conditions, but there's slight differences, I think. Even, we find that sometimes travelling around Australia, that there's slight differences in how things are done. It was the same in New Zealand. So by the time I got to the World Cup, there were people that I knew on the team. My, assistant TD was someone that I knew. So again, that felt okay. I felt more pressure to do the absolute best job that I could, which I always do. Yeah.
But Takapuna was that first initial sort of foray into that area, which did challenge you quite a lot.
Yeah, it really did. So, and look, I think I was fresh off my level 2 course, pretty much, and I got 2 ITU appointments that year. So I was the TD for the Takapuna Continental Sprint Cup and the assistant technical delegate for the Mooloolaba World Cup. So I kind of didn't know what had hit me. I just really didn't know. Didn't know where to start, really. But again, I just had that belief that I'd been given these roles because somebody believed I could do them. So I just got stuck in and started and worked my way through the process. And again, had some friends. So my friend Kathy Davey which many people will know from New Zealand, was my assistant technical delegate for Takapuna, and we were both a little bit sort of the same way. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Should we be doing this? Are we grown up enough?
Yeah.
But we got through it. Again, you just use the process that you've used before on other races. The process works. You approach things the same way. You know,
and you've certainly seen in your time as a technical delegate, you've seen some of the resources improve and the methods improve. So for someone perhaps taking on their first, role as a TD, there is a lot more resources and support now than perhaps, when you first started it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's a lot more resources. There's a lot more. The pathway seems to be a little bit more
defined,
spelt out, I guess, and defined. Yeah. So, I think people maybe don't get thrown in the deep end as much as we might have back in the day, Michael. So, but there is, I always felt supported. I always felt that people had my back, and I knew that there were people that I could count on. The old phone a friend is always an option that you have, you know, even at that level. So at one of the events in Takapuna, I had a situation where, that was a really interesting situation where I sort of really held my own a bit. One of the athletes at the Continental Cup hadn't shown up to the briefing the day before, just hadn't shown up.
Yep.
And he showed up to race on the Saturday. And what do you do? Sorry, you can't race.
Yeah.
So anyway, it became a bit of that was my decision. You can't race. Sorry, you didn't show up at the briefing. He ended up racing. There was a lot of toing and froing about he didn't read the information. The information you read said that you register on Saturday, because again, a lot of the information on these websites where there's an age group race and a Continental Cup or ITU race is all posted on the same website, and you have to kind of know where to look. I had a discussion with a coach who was really pushing me to let him race because it was an Olympic qualification year and the points were really important, and this is important to my program and this is really important to this athlete. And I was really proud of the way I handled that moment, because I sort of said to this coach, yes, you're right, this is an Olympic qualification. I also hope one day that I might be selected to go to the Olympics as an official, and every decision I make at this level has an impact on that. So I need to really consider things here and figure out whether there is anything that I can do for your athlete, because the rules are pretty clear. If you don't show up, you don't race.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did have some brains trust there with some very experienced officials. The race director was actually Chanel Barrett from New Zealand, who, again, is a very experienced, very well-respected official. So she could see that something was going on. And she came over and we had a bit of a chat. And she said, do you want to talk to Enrique at the ITU? Maybe you should ask Enrique. And I was like, I don't even know Enrique. Who is Enrique? So she just rang,
the other side of the world.
Rang the other side of the world. This guy was a guy on the other end of emails that I'd been getting about what I needed to do with my timing and results, but I didn't really know Enrique. I didn't, have a chat. So I'm on the phone. Anyway, the outcome of that was, Lyndell, if you don't have a waiting list, what's the harm? You can just let him race. It's okay. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'll let the guy race. So I let him race.
Yep.
But it was, there was a lot to unpack just from that situation. Sometimes you put under a lot of pressure from not just the athletes, but their coaches, and there's a lot that goes into it. You have to think about your integrity as an official as much as, and that's, I think, something that coaches don't understand and don't appreciate as much. So, it was a really, really interesting experience.
Oh, wow. Yeah, certainly. I suppose fast forward a little bit there, and we sort of look to 2018. There's a couple of things happened in 2018. One was you were at the Commonwealth Games, but I suppose I'd like to look at was the World Championships were on the Gold Coast, and you were appointed head referee for the World Championships. How that was obviously a little bit, was probably a surprise, but a pleasant surprise. How did you sort of deal with that?
Yeah, look, it was a really, really pleasant surprise. I didn't imagine that selection would happen at all. So when I got a email from Ross Capel, who was one of the TDs, asking me whether I would take it on, again, my philosophy of if somebody offers you a job, they've probably thought about it long and hard. They think you can do it. They believe in you. They think that's the best spot for you on their team. So I said yes.
Yeah.
So off I went, and that was a really sorry.
No, that's fine. No, continue on.
Yeah, I mean, it was I felt like it was a big experience, a big step up. And again, you're in that situation where you've got pressure from lots of people all of the time to make decisions quickly. And, that's an area that I'm still developing and working on as an official, really, that ability to do that kind of thing on the field of play.
Yeah. Were there some sort of unique challenges that event sort of threw up for you as a head referee?
Oh, plenty. Plenty.
We've only got half an hour here, so we'll just probably go to a couple of them anyway, certainly.
Yeah, look, there was a few that, there's always the curly ones with the age groupers, which is, again, you have to just take it on its merits and make the decisions. There's obviously a situation in the men's race where two competitors cut the swim buoy, and I had to make a decision about that. So yeah, I mean, you use all the resources that you have available to you, video footage, eyewitness, any footage that you can get, TV footage. I was also really lucky to be working with Leslie Buchanan from Canada, was the other head referee. Again, I don't know how often two female referees are appointed at that kind of level, so that was a pretty special thing as well to be one of two women in that position. Leslie was great. She was fantastic to be able to bounce some of these decisions off. We really tried to be very consistent in the decisions that we made. So that was great. Another situation at that World Cup, those World Championships and Grand Final, was competition juries. So Leslie was detained in a competition jury in one of the paratriathlon events. And again, we'd split the categories across paratriathlon, and with Leslie being off.
So you're only responsible for some categories and she was responsible for others?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was, everything was split down the middle. Yeah. And so for the paratriathlon, I was responsible for the standing categories, essentially, and she was responsible for the VI and hand cycle wheelchair athletes, yes. And there was a protest in one of the VI events, so she had to head off to the competition jury, and then all of a sudden everything's happening then. So the standing categories are in progress, the wheelchair categories are in progress, and all of a sudden I had to be making decisions on all of those categories all at once. So that was something that was unexpected that I had to just take on. And yeah,
because you'd only prepared for your categories, was that right?
I'd been super prepared for my categories. I knew all of the specific rules and hadn't been so attentive to making sure I understood all of the rules. And, there's a lot of very technical rules in triathlon in general, but certainly in paratriathlon takes that up another level. So I did a lot of speed reading very quickly when there are a couple of issues in those races. So Yeah.
Sure. And people may not realise, I mean, you don't just suddenly sort of arrive as a head referee. You've obviously travelled and gone to events, in other countries and states, etc. What have
Yeah.
been some of your experiences of going to, other international events in
Oh,
other
I've had some
countries?
great experiences internationally. Certainly since doing my level 2 course, I, have made a really specific effort to travel as much as I can to events. So I've officiated in Chicago at the test event for the grand final in Chicago. I travelled to Yokohama for the WTS race there. I've officiated in Hamburg at the WTS there, and also was really fortunate to be selected for the test event for the Olympics and Paralympics as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've travelled quite a bit, and yeah, that can be quite daunting, especially early on when you nominate for races on the other side of the world and you realise that you're just not going to know anybody there.
Yeah.
Or, you might know Thanos, but you're never going to see him because he'll be locked in an office somewhere most of the time. And, you have to just be ready to meet people and,
Was there
yeah.
an event that sort of stood out in terms of that, which, did challenge you?
Look, the funniest experience I had was when I went to Hamburg. Because again, I really didn't expect to know anyone over there. But I think, Michael, you had a friend over in Europe, Thomas.
We had the same friend, yeah, we'd worked with, yeah.
No, I didn't know him. Yeah. So he was going to be there. And Frank Stapleton.
I think I'd worked with Thomas somewhere before, and then I think it was Abu Dhabi, and then I sort of said, "Hey, you could look after Lyndell."
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Frank Staple did the same thing with his friend Hugh McCatnamy.
Yeah.
And so when I arrived, it was, "Lyndell's here, everybody. We have to look after Lyndell." And I guess it was just nice to know that there'd be somebody there that I had a connection with. I was worried about nothing because you have a connection with technical officials just by virtue of going through some of the same experiences, regardless of where you are in the world and the level of experience that you have.
Yeah.
You still go through similar things and you just bond instantly, really.
Yeah. No, certainly. And that's something real important to know if you are traveling. There are people who obviously just put a word in for you, so you're not sort of necessarily going in blind.
Yeah. Whether it's interstate, if you're a new RTO and you're doing your first interstate trip, it's the same thing. We'll definitely be able to find someone that that we know on the team. Internationally, same thing.
Yeah. And with all these different events, is there a favorite sort of event or type of event you like being involved with?
Favorite type. So I have two answers to this. I really love officiating at the top level at a World Cup or a WTS, and part of the reason why I continue to officiate is that it's something that I can always get better at, and it's something I can always improve in, and something I can just bring my best to every time I show up. And that's what I like about officiating at that top level. The athletes are there to bring their best. And that's what I like to do as well. So bringing the best, doing everything that you can to support those athletes who want to do their best. It keeps you on your toes. It has that, it has that feeling of you really want to strive for excellence, particularly in that arena, of officiating at that elite level. But at the other end of the spectrum, I just love the grassroots events and, new events. I really enjoy working with new events and new race directors, new event directors. I've had some really great experiences over the years. When Cross Triathlon was just launching, we had some race directors here locally in Brisbane who were really keen and wanted to start running off-road triathlons because they were mountain bikers and trail runners, and just working with them to understand the structure of a triathlon and the sanctioning and the intricacies of the rules of a triathlon, and that was really rewarding. And, you know, that race director now, Simon and Robin Lazenby, have run a world championship cross triathlon in Lake Krakenbach. So that was really pleasing to be able to work with that race director. It just helps to develop the sport, and you know, it brings diversity to our events. It brings diversity to the style of racing that's available to athletes. And yeah, just as I said, I think that diversity strengthens the sport overall. So I enjoy that aspect of it as well.
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, we look forward, Townsville, obviously, with World Multisports now back a year, but is that something you put on your sort of bucket list to sort of go to?
Oh, I wouldn't mind. The Lake Krakenbach was awesome when we had the cross triathlon world champs here, whenever that was, a few years ago now.
Yeah.
I haven't been to one of the multi-sport festivals since they've launched. They've only been going for maybe 4 or 5 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I haven't been to one of those yet. So I think that would be, you know, really similar to a grand final where it's just event after event after event after event. And I think that would be really challenging, but a fantastic experience, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier about being obviously at the Tokyo test event, and I think most people know that you're obviously off to, you know, the Rio Paralympics when they occur next year.
Well, hopefully they'll occur, the Paralympics and Olympics. I guess there's a lot going on in that space, and we just have to wait and see. But yeah, I am really fortunate to have been selected for the Paralympics.
I mean, can you just tell us about that, you know, that time when you heard about being selected? What, you know, how did it occur? What was sort of going on?
It feels like a bit of a blur. I'm not sure that I can really recount recount that actually. It felt really surreal. It felt really surreal when we got our selection for the Commonwealth Games as well, though. You know, that was another really surreal experience. It's quite a process to apply. You have to put yourself forward and meet quite specific criteria to be selected by, or to be put forward by Triathlon Australia to the ITU. So, you know, just even that process of working out whether I was actually eligible and had I fulfilled all the criteria was quite stressful, to be honest.
Yes, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. So just reading the eligibility and realizing, yes, I'm eligible, I can apply.
Yeah.
Even that was exciting. So you put in your application and you wait, and you know, it's a multi-stage thing, isn't it? You know, you get the first sort of, yes, you've been shortlisted, or yes, you're eligible, yes, you're shortlisted, and selection. So
and then finally, you are obviously you're obviously selected, and fingers crossed, you'll be there in a bit over a year's time. So
I hope so. The test event was absolutely amazing. The venue build that they've done for the Tokyo Games is just, it's probably the biggest build that I've ever seen for an event. They've really thought about the course and how it's laid out really well, and there's a lot that's gone into the planning for that event, so it'd be a shame if it doesn't go ahead.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, you saw the build that went behind the Commonwealth Games was quite much more than, you know, a normal WTS or even World Championships to a certain degree. And then that step up again, you've been able to sort of witness as well. So it will be. It's been, I mean, certainly been great sort of chatting with you, Lyndell, and getting a bit of an idea about, you know, where you sort of come from in the sport. Have you sort of set any sort of goals for yourself over the sort of the next sort of couple of years, apart from obviously being at the Olympics, that you'd like to sort of, you know, look forward to?
Obviously the Olympics is the main thing at the moment, but I can't pin all my hopes on that in case it doesn't happen. I do want to keep up my travelling, so, you know, all things being equal, I'd really like to travel internationally again next year to, not sure, Yokohama or maybe Abu Dhabi. I'll probably nominate for one of those. Obviously, you've mentioned that I'm a level 2, like a continental technical official. I'd really like to work towards being, again, just even knowing that I'm eligible to be able to be selected for the level 3 course to become a international technical official. That's a really big goal for me. I'm really yeah, I mean, every time you go to a course, you learn something, and there's just something more to challenge you and to, you know, build your experience and build your expertise. So I really, that's probably the biggest goal that I have, is to work towards that accreditation.
Yeah.
And through that means, you know, traveling to lots of events and
and gaining more experience. So
gaining more experience, just always gaining more experience. I think that's the thing, you know, regardless of, even if the only opportunities that we have are to officiate, you know, even within our state or even within Australia, you know, who knows, we might get a bubble and be able to travel to New Zealand. Every event you do, regardless of whether it's an event for 100 people in a regional area of Queensland or, you know, an event on the biggest scale, there's always opportunities to improve your performance, and there's always opportunities to learn something, and sometimes you learn things from the most unexpected places. So
and I know, I mean, you've spoken about obviously the people who influence you, how you've grown and changed, and you've obviously mentored a lot of people and helped a lot of people over the years. We really didn't get to that today, but you are certainly one of the most, you know, one of the most approachable sort of people in the sport. And on behalf of those people you've helped, just want to say thank you. And it's been great chatting with you today. And I'm certain we can revisit some of these topics and talk about other things in the future.
That'd be great. Anytime. I love a chat. You know that.
Yeah. Thanks, Lyndell.
And it's been my pleasure to mentor everyone that I have. I enjoy that aspect greatly.
Great. Thanks, Lyndell.